Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Arden, and today we're going to talk about Taskmaster number 1 and 2. Now, I know I might have gone on a little flight of fancy with the thumbnail, and that may not be accurate, but I feel accurately conveys the tone of this book. I kind of picked this up thinking, oh, well, we all know why Marvel put out this book, or you should know. There was supposed to be a Black Widow movie that came out last year, so this is one of many fun little tie-ins to various movies that should have been a big summer thing last year that weren't. There was a period of time, I'm sure you all experienced too, where Black Widow, or no, so not Black Widow, but though she has appeared on products too, but I was thinking of Wonder Woman was on a bunch of Doritos bags everywhere everyone went for a little while, randomly in the summer, when there was no Wonder Woman movie to be seen. So in a similar vein with that, there's been a Taskmaster series out, even though we haven't seen a Black Widow series. It's not a direct tie-in to that movie, although it does involve her in a very fun way. And while it's obviously not the world's best miniseries out there, it might be my favorite ongoing one right now, which says a lot less, but is still great. And I was really pleasantly surprised because this book kind of features writer I don't really know named Jed MacKay, Alessandro Vitti, who's the artist I do know, and Guru EFX, who's the colorist, who I also know, and I also know the letterer, Joe Camarnya, but Jed MacKay is a new name for me, and he does a great job here. He has an excellent sense of humor that's a really thorough thread throughout this particular miniseries so far. And I would think I would definitely recommend it. It's a nice mix of various stuff. There's, some things going on. Oh, God. I hate when that happens. I usually just keep my ringer off. But anyways, at least the mic's working. So let's just get right into it, because I keep wanting to dive into how, I kind of expected a pretty standard mercenary story, something maybe a little more straight-laced. Taskmaster can be a fun character, whether he's a mercenary or part of the Avengers Academy or even a just outright villain. He's usually a pretty fun character. For those that don't know, his whole thing is that he can mimic pretty much anyone he sees and their skills, and he has a whole assortment of abilities from various characters that he's observed over the years. Generally, with this character, you kind of have the more comedic roles, generally when he's on a team or something like that. Usually in something more solo like this, I expected them to focus a little more on his mercenary side and less on the more comedic aspects. Which isn't to say this is some comedy either. This is a very fun book, but there's also a pretty serious story on here. And the first page, to be fair, is about Marial Hill apparently being assassinated. And I say apparently because we all know how the spy game, and more particularly the Marvel spy game, goes. But after that, the second page, you guys have seen flash by a couple times now, opens on Taskmaster on a golf course, and he's training this dude how to play golf. But it makes perfect sense for this guy, and Tony Masters, is Taskmaster's real name, mentions that he observed various pros just on TV playing golf, so he's basically got those skills, and he's frustratingly trying to convey it on this rich guy who he's charging like thousands of dollars for the privilege of being taught by a supervillain how to play golf, I guess. And nearby is another golfer doing a similar thing. These two rich guys are obviously in some sort of rivalry, and he's hired Bullseye to teach him how to golf. And I just think it's such a fun, hilarious use of these two characters. I was kind of just on break at work and was reading this book and happened to mention this setup, and just to my coworker, and she was killing herself laughing, and I was really grinning ear to ear throughout this, especially because of what happens next. But the Shadowcatcher mentions that the art looks great, and yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of those things where that's just a benefit of opening on a creative place like a golf course. It's not the most insane place in the world. If anything, it's oddly subdued for a Marvel comic, but that's what works so nice about it. You get Guru really able to show off their ability to color. I say they because I have no idea who that person is. And like have that just nice green landscape. It lets Taskmaster's costume really be shown in full color. And it's a great scene for what happens next because an assassin suddenly starts shooting heavily at, well, all four of these gentlemen on the green. And Taskmaster, just working with what he has available to him, starts whacking golf balls towards the assassin, who makes a brief Russian comment when he manages to hit the scope of the rifle they're using. Pretty cool moment. And then Taskmaster runs to a golf cart and begins using Robbie Reyes's Ghost Rider driving abilities to pilot this golf cart. Now, I grew up for a time on a farm, and we had a golf cart for kind of getting around, especially when you're a wee little kid, around the various little property buildings, we'll say, and also to our neighbors who we knew well, and I was over there all the time. And they really only go so fast. So, and also anyone who's played golf will know that too. But it's just really funny. They have like a little radio playing on it, doing like working 9 to 5, and you can really just imagine this scene playing out. He does manage to like kind of get onto this archery range, however plausible you find that, and grabs a kid's bow and starts shooting at the assassin who is chasing after him in a motorcycle. So, you know, he has no hope of outpacing this thing, but he manages to, well, shooting at the assassin, hit the bike and cripple it. But he's amazed that the killer or hitman or whatever you want to call him, I don't want to give it away just yet, is able to avoid these blows so effortlessly. And he continues like kind of piloting on, but just when he's kind of getting cornered, at some point he got a call saying like, oh, you're like, if you want to get out of this alive, you got to come to this spot. And he manages to reach the spot just in time, kind of thing. And it's Nick Fury who's waiting for him and is kind of his rescue. And he explains Marial Hill's been murdered and all evidence points to you being the culprit. But he knows that if you actually, like, if Taskmaster actually killed Marial Hill, there's no way he would have gotten in a car with Nick Fury. So they start driving off, adding and all that. I've kind of really come around to the idea of Samuel Jackson, Nick Fury, being Nick Fury now, and the old version of that character is the Watcher now. That's just a funny little quirk of Marvel at this point. And Nick Fury is able to get Taskmaster to kind of come along with him and cooperate pretty quickly because he says, oh, you know who's chasing after you, right? It's Black Widow. And again, I was explaining this to my coworker, and she really just loved this premise of this tie-in, if you want to call it that book, but a book clearly put out because of the Black Widow movie, starring one of the villains, with Black Widow kind of set up as the antagonist. I just love the premise. It's so great, and I feel that alone will probably sell some of you guys on checking out this miniseries. I would recommend it. And Nick Fury says, all right, if you like you want to survive, you got to come with me. And if you want to clear your name, we're going to have to figure out what Marial Hill was looking after. And Nick Fury is personally motivated to do so because he wants to figure out who killed Marial Hill. And again, we're just assuming Marial Hill is actually dead here, even though we all kind of know that's not the case. It's not really the point. It's just kind of backstory for why the wheels start turning so quickly in this story. And it's a great way to get things going when we start on a golf course. Again, they just use that setting so creatively and in such a fun way. I love this opening scene. It really just sold me on the whole miniseries. And we're going to talk about the first 2 issues, by the way. I don't think I put that anywhere in the video, so maybe that's worth mentioning because we're just about done on the first book here. I held it up, but that doesn't provide any information. Shadowcatcher says, come with me if you want to live. Evoking Terminator. Yeah, of course. It really kind of has that moment, but it also fits with that model because it's that kind of tight action scene that's almost something out of a James Cameron film, mixed in with, like, we'll call it broad humor, but very clever humor, kind of above what I might expect out of James Cameron. So, but definitely something that does remind me of T2, even without Shadowcatcher saying it. But it's a good point to make. Nick Fury says, all right, Marial Hill was looking into something called the Rubicon Trigger. It's part of some old Hammer protocol. And for those of you that don't know, Hammer was a version of S.H.I.E.L.D. that was created by Norman Osborn back in the day when he had an ungodly amount of power with and a great, we'll say, relationship with the U.S. government, and was basically able to take control of S.H.I.E.L.D. and turn it into Hammer. So it's pretty serious business, and apparently got her killed, and Taskmaster was framed. By the way, I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but I really do think Nick Fury is behind this framing, and Marial Hill might very well be alive because of that, which is kind of brilliant and hilarious if true. Uh, so even though I'm calling it pretty early on here, because we're 2 out of the 5 issues this miniseries will run, uh, but I think this one, or I think that's the case. I'm really not basing it on anything. It just feels like spycraft, and it just kind of feels like something any Nick Fury would do. Let's put it that way. So Nick Fury explains, in order for us to figure out what's behind this thing, we have to pass into this door, and it's locked with biometric sensors. But they're not simple biometric sensors. They're the kind of thing only Taskmaster could open. There's kinesthetic sensor, I think Nick Fury calls it at one point. And that is what in particular makes me think Nick Fury is behind it, by the way, I wanted to say. But in order to do it, Taskmaster's going to have to study these people up close, he says. And Nick Fury's like, oh boy, I thought so. That's not going to be easy. And he says the 3 targets, and they're on the cover of the first issue, but so they'll flash by here and there. Number 1, Phil Coulson, director of the Squadron Supreme of America project, heavily affiliated with the Pentagon, also evil and secretly working for Mephisto, but they don't know that part. Okoye, director of the Agents of Wakanda, and then Ami Han, director of South Korea's NIS Tiger Division. So 3 heavy hitters, all huge international figures. All these bigger figures, yeah, as Nick Fury says, top spies from around the world surrounded by some of the most dangerous people to ever exist. Pretty accurate way of putting it. And Taskmaster ends the first issue with, well, ain't we got fun. Honestly, not the strongest line in this book, but still, what an ending to the first issue. Kwabena Amanfo, I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation, so I apologize, but he asks, or she, or they asks, which MCU show are you most looking forward to see? What If? That series seems really interesting. Almost, I don't know. I'm always interested in what if stuff. It's got crazy talent attached to it. All these people reprising roles that I never thought would get a chance to again. Oh, apparently I pronounced the name very close. Awesome. Benna? But I don't know. I get so frustrated with names, not because I wish I was better at it, is all. Anyway, so that's the end of the first issue. Issue number 2 is another heavy hitter, and I have that one in digital, so I'll just be going all here, but it's all about kind of Taskmaster getting a reading on Phil Coulson, and the opening, again, we kind of flash on here. They're taking advantage of Phil Coulson's well-known comic book fandom, and basically Taskmaster is going to disguise himself while Phil Coulson's going to a comic book store to pick up his weekly pull, which I just love as a little detail. And that'll be that. If everything goes according to plan, Coulson won't even know that they're doing this. He'll get a reading on how Phil Coulson moves, and they'll have their first target easy. It's got a great opening where Phil Coulson kind of gives a review, or sorry, Agent Nick Fury gives a review on Phil Coulson's like current status. Talks about how he was killed during Secret Empire, He somehow returned to life during Jason Aaron's adventures, and Fury doesn't know a lot of insights about it. He's like, I don't know why the dude is suddenly up and up with the Pentagon and running Squadron Supreme. I have no idea what's going on with that. Don't know if we can trust him at all, but I do know if he's still Phil Coulson, he'll be going to get his comics. So, a great opening to this book. Around this issue, kind of surrounding the other events of this book, and we'll get into all that in a second, but they're kind of planning out this mission. It's got a great little, we're almost getting like a heist feel to it. First book is T2, the second book is like almost Ocean's 11 or something, but not just with like the two gentlemen planning out a heist. And if I knew more heist movies, I'd be able to name something more apt. But as they're planning this, they kind of have a bit of an ace in the hole, because if Coulson gets a read on Taskmaster, which of course happens, they're going to call in the big guns, and they're going to call in Hyperion, because if a supervillain is like inches away from Coulson, they're going to call in that like Coulson's a priority target, and also he's got this particular iteration of Squadron Supreme under his thumb. They're going to call in Hyperion, which is basically, think of it as Superman for those not in the know. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. So surrounding this, they're kind of planning what Taskmaster is going to do if Hyperion shows up. And basically, the short answer is get pummeled to death. Now, to be fair, Hyperion's like, please don't make me do this. And Taskmaster's like going at him with his swords, his bow and arrows, his shield, all that stuff. I don't actually know if he uses his shield, but it ain't going well. Everything that Taskmaster tries, Hyperion absorbs or deflects without issue. He's like, well, what are you doing? Why are you even trying? And meanwhile, Hyperion does these token hits, and as Taskmaster is well aware, he's basically fighting a god, and the god is just toying with him. But even those hits, he's hitting too hard. And the way the narration is, it really gets you into this moment. This is one of the better action scenes I've read in a comic, whatever you want to call it, in some time. It's intense, and it gets into the mindset of someone who's been severely injured, where he's barely even thinking straight, and he's like, oh god, like not even like there's just blood dripping all around his costume and stuff, and he's just like too hard is all the narration basically says as he's sitting there stunned. And but then he tries his next thing and it goes horribly wrong, and he gets hit again, and it's just getting worse and worse. But the reason that he's doing this is to basically lull Hyperion into a bit of a false sense of security, because one of the arrows he fires is a boomerang arrow filled with this weird form of radiation. And Fury, during their little back and forth planning this all out, Fury says, well, at one point, and it's an interesting point, a little moment where they acknowledge that Squadron Supreme generally is these various iterations of past, what am I trying to say? Past versions of Hyperion are from alternate universes and stuff. And Squadron Supreme always kind of flirted with that. So Fury says, well, we don't really know what version of Hyperion this is. That could change things, because we don't know if this is going to work for sure. But at one point, a version of Hyperion was on the Thunderbolts. And they had this little bullet thing made of this extremely rare radiation. As Fury puts it, it's so rare it might as well not exist. But the Thunderbolts had this bullet basically Hyperion under control, or that version. And he said, so in theory this thing should work. And then sure enough, it explodes around him and basically leaves him depowered. And Tony, or like as Fury keeps calling him, but Taskmaster is so stunned and brutalized. It is a little weird, by the way, that Nick Fury keeps calling this guy Tony. Like, it almost throws me off, because of course there's also Tony Stark. And when you have Nick Fury in the mix, it does evoke that a little bit. But anyways, he's not in this story. This is all about Taskmaster. Taskmaster is so beaten and broken that he's not thinking straight. And he just goes like, hurt, rage, kill, I think are the words in his narration, or something along those lines. Like, it's not even coherent thought. And he just starts pummeling the guy and just being like, you're can't hurt me anymore. Like, and Fury's talking in his ear, like, don't do this. If you kill him, like, they're gonna come after you even harder, and they won't stop until you're dead. And we can't clear your name if you actually do this. Unlike all the business with Marial Hill. So, and what gets through to him is finally is like he's like, be a professional. And I love that's the line that finally gets through to Taskmaster. He stops. He's like, oh, get me the hell out of here, and he gets extracted. And then it's like, all right, great. Now on to the next one. So that's it for Taskmaster number 1 and 2. But I thoroughly enjoyed this series. Hey, Tevia, thanks for joining us at the end of the recap. And would definitely recommend it between its excellent artwork with nice mix of color and just excellent scenery. We start with a golf course, and then the next place or the next one's all like just in the streets of Washington D.C., like outside of a comic book store. It's great, and that thing that happened with Hyperion, like I said, one of the better action scenes I've read in some time. Just what a great example of just the sheer power a superhero like that has. He's just toying with Taskmaster and he nearly beat the dude to death. And the effect it has on Taskmaster's internal monologue, which is really just such a wonderful, unique facet of comic books. I really would love to see more of that in film, by the way. We were talking about MCU stuff, and that's where I get kind of hopeful about that being explored maybe a little bit in one of the What If episodes or something like that. And yeah, the audacity of that scene and just the power Hyperion has against Taskmaster. They don't really walk it back at all or let Taskmaster get away when he shouldn't have been able to. Because they talk about that. Like at one point, Taskmaster, before Hyperion shows up, he's like, I don't know why I'm bothering running. Like the dude moves at supersonic speed, but it's just so he can kind of position himself a little bit against this overwhelming force. And the dude just shows up in 3 seconds after he's called, basically. At which point, Taskmaster is just screwed. Arden Espinoza says, picked this up for the cover and was not disappointed. Same. I think I said that name correctly. I pretty much did it for the same. I kind of did it like almost just like, oh, let's see what Marvel put together in response to the Black Widow movie. I love this thing, and if you only picked up like the first issue or the second issue, I would recommend either because yeah, both are great. Shadowcatcher says the comic is trying to humanize Taskmaster. I guess not any. He's always been a pretty neutral character, and you definitely get into his pocket really quickly, but the dude started out just like making money off a rich guy using his powers to teach someone how to golf. And I like the character for that reason. I think like he's really doing this for self-motivated reasons. He has no choice in this. You could have a character far more villainous. You have to basically do the same thing. What it does a good job of is because it does that narrative stuff so well, you really get into his head and kind of get on his side. Because for those that haven't read Jason Aaron's Avengers, Squadron Supreme's up to no good. And if you've been caught up in the news, this book's like a great little tie-in to all of that stuff because there's going to be like this bigger event of some kind or something going on with the Squadron Supreme. I don't know the exact details, but there's big plans for them. Let's put it that way. I forget what that storyline's called, but basically they were all like kind of working on behalf of Mephisto, it seems. So we'll see how all that goes. And this book's a great example of how a shared continuity and universe can work so well because if you read that stuff, then like all of those little details are kind of existing and clearly known behind the scenes, even though Nick Fury and Taskmaster are completely oblivious to it. That kind of thing happens here and there, and I love when that goes on. For example, I remember at one point during the Deadpool run, when Time Runs Out was happening, Deadpool just finds himself in the middle of an incursion event for a single page. And it's just such a great little nod to all that stuff going on without it really being a big crossover event or anything. And that's kind of true of Taskmaster number 2. You don't really need to know all that Avengers stuff to really enjoy a cool fight scene. and a great little step in this miniseries. So check it out if you haven't already, or are interested, or if I've convinced you. I know I came in strong for this one, but I loved it. It really is one of the better miniseries I have read that's like ongoing currently. And while the thumbnail's an exaggeration, it kind of, like I said, it's evoking the tone of this book and this series, which is very, and more accurately, the character of Tony Masters, who is very self-confident and kind of builds himself up, but not in a way that I find insufferable, especially not in this book. You know, he's kind of making his jokey stuff, but his circumstances are so great, and the premise of this book is so strong that it basically carries the rest of the book. So, yeah, like I said, check it out if you sound interested at all in that stuff. And thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. I have no idea what. I'll probably try and do some sort of stream, but. Oh, right. Well, if all goes according to plan, it should be a fun one. But I don't want to give that surprise away yet. So, see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.